Hello and welcome to this Affinity Photo tutorial. Now recently I did a video that looked at 4 different ways to add contrast creatively to an image, and that tutorial was an adaptation of a Photoshop tutorial done by Digital Camera magazine. Now Digital Camera magazine also did a few months later or earlier another video looking at adding contrast. Again, there were 4 options. Now I've selected 2 of those options to adapt in this video. So I'm going to use this image which I took at Colchester train station because I was intrigued by this sort of double tiered bike rack. I've never seen one before and I was quite intrigued by it. So I took a picture of it. It's not a brilliant picture, but it's okay for the purposes here because we want to add some contrast. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come to the adjustments, and this is half black and white circle here, and we're going to add a levels adjustment, and sort of regardless of whatever image you're using, raise or bring the white level slider down to about 70%. There or thereabouts, 71 I'm on. Now this will make your image quite bright, but what we're going to do is change the blend mode. Now you can do it from up here in the levels adjustment, but I'm going to do it from the blend mode option that's already within this adjustment, and we're going to select multiply, and this will make the image much darker again. So we will shut that down, and then we're going to add another levels adjustment, and this time moving the gamma slider to the left will sort of brighten the image, and this will depend on your particular image. I'm not going to go too far, not even up to 1, I'm still at 0.776. So I'll shut that down, and just to show the difference between the two, I will highlight both those levels and turn them off. That was the original, and that is now with those 2 adjustments with more contrast in the image. Now the chap in the digital camera tutorial, he says that doing this process will give you the contrast, but it will also add saturation to the colours. I do not have a vast amount of colours in this particular image. I mean, obviously I've got the bit of red on the bike here, the green in the trees, and a bit of colour on this sign. Yours may have more colour and might be more noticeable. Personally, I quite liked the effect, but just to sort of continue his tutorial on, let me just come to the deselect both of those. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click the top layer and come down to merge visible, and this will put everything that we've done so far on a new layer, and you can turn off these levels adjustments or you can delete them, it doesn't matter. And what we're going to do now is change the blend mode of this new layer, and we're going to change it to, oh sorry, wrong one, change it to luminosity, and that should then blend it with the background image and sort of desaturate the colours. I personally can't see a vast amount of difference on my particular picture, but it might be more noticeable on whatever picture that you are going to add this to. So basically that is it. 2 levels adjustments, and then making a merge visible adjustment and changing the blend mode to luminosity to knock back the saturation the previous adjustments had added. So I'm going to select those 3 layers and I'm just going to delete them. So we're back to our start image, and we're going to look at the second way of doing contrast, and this is much more sort of creative look to this, because we're going to be using a blur and we're going to be using motion blur. So the first thing we need to do is to duplicate the image that you have. So I'll just right click the layer, come down to duplicate. You can use Control plus J or Command plus J, and to this I'm going to add a live filter, and the live filter is this 2 triangles on top of each other sort of thing icon. Just click on that and come up to motion blur. Now I want the blur to be going horizontally, so I'm going to leave it on 0. I mean, you could have it on 180, it's still going to be the same effect. And I'm also going to put a tick into preserve alpha, and if I move this all the way up to 100, which is as far as you can go with the slider, it's still not quite far enough for what we need for this effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm click in here and I'm going to type in 300, and that will make that even more blurred than you could get by just using the slider. And this happens with many adjustments. You are not necessarily restricted to how far you can go just with the slider. You can, in many cases, you can go above what is considered to be like the maximum by typing in a number rather than using a slider. So that it's something to sort of keep an eye on. So now we're going to change the blend mode to one of the contrast blend modes, and the contrast ones are overlay, soft light, hard light, and all these ones here. Now in the video he used hard light. I will come back to that in a second. So if we use overlay, for example, as you can see, we have added contrast, and there is a slight bit of blurring effect going on here, which is depends on this what one you pick is all depends on the creative look that you're going for. Soft light, there's hardly any noticeable blurring going on, so that is sort of probably, if you don't want any blur, soft light is probably the place to go. But coming back to his hard light option, which I personally also quite like in this effect, because with my bikes, which are things that should be moving and are stationary, this sort of blurring effect gives a sort of effect that like the bikes are moving although they're stationary. It will have some major effects on colour, as you can see with the trees up here. It will sort of, in certain areas, it will stretch the colours a bit too much maybe for some people. So you might want to go back to overlay, where you get some of that blurring, but the colours, like here in this tree area, it's not as noticeable. But I quite like that hard light look, and you could always paint onto the mask and get rid of any areas that you are not 100% happy with. If I get the paintbrush tool and have black as my colour, increase the brush size, so making sure that you are painting onto the live layer, I could sort of take that colour away from those trees. But I sort of quite liked it, so I'm going to put that back. And that is basically it. That is the end of the tutorial, looking at 2 different extra ways of removing adding contrast creatively to your images. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.